On this episode of the Carolina Storyteller, we're going to be talking about a picture from a church in Charleston that may show proof that ghosts actually exist. And why did a woman have glass put on top of the fence that surrounds the mansion where she held a girls' school? Stay tuned. This is the Carolina Storyteller.
Woods where shadows creep, stories rise as the campfire reaps. Jonathan voice a haunting thrill, with every tale he bends on will. Echoes whisper, the night draws near. By the firelight, our fears collide. The Carolina Storyteller, our guide. Through the spooky, the feathering fight. Fables of darkness igniting the night of the night.
Welcome back to the Carolina Storyteller, folks. I appreciate you guys coming back. I know that it's been a minute. I've been dealing with some health issues, but I'm back and I've got a couple of great stories for you guys, and I hope that you enjoy. So let's just get right into it. We're going to start off with a story from downtown Charleston. Now, when you walk the streets of downtown Charleston in South Carolina, you're going to find history wherever you look. There are buildings there from the birth of America that stand with stories held within inside their walls that go back to the very creation of our nation. We're talking way before the 1700s. No building stands out more, however, I think, than the beautiful St. Philip's Church, which is located conveniently enough on Church Street. Today, you can recognize this building by its stone steeple and clock tower that rises high into the Charleston skyline. And while you're there, you might see that there have been renovations that have gone on over the centuries that this place has been there. But the church has been on those grounds since the 1680s. That's right, we're talking almost 400, well, over 300 years, almost 400, 350 years. To say the church has seen the passage of many historical events is an understatement. In fact, the cemetery on the grounds has some 3,000 permanent residents. Famous Charlestonians, from actors to wealthy landowners, a former vice president, and signers of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States of America, have been laid to rest on that sacred patch of earth. There are some who say, however, that not all who were laid to rest at St. Philip's actually rest. A sign in the front of the graveyard states that the only ghost at St. Philip's is the Holy Ghost, and then invites the reader to come to Sunday service, because that's what you do at a church, is invite people to come to church. But locals and visitors will tell you a different story. There have been tales of ghostly apparitions walking amongst the headstones, and many claim that feel as if they're being watched as they tour the graves of those that have gone many, many years before any of us were even born, probably before our parents were even born, actually. One such tale comes from June 10th, 1987. Now, I, at the time, was still a young boy growing up on the Waccamaw River. But this isn't my story. This is about a man named Harry who was walking the historic streets of Charleston that day, trying out his brand new camera. Now, on a whim, Harry sticks his lens through the bars of the fence surrounding that old graveyard and snapped off a few quick photos of the graves, including one belonging to the stillborn daughter of Sue Howard Hardy, who would die only a few days after giving birth to said child. Now, when Harry had these pictures developed, he was shocked by what he saw. In the picture of the child's grave was a figure of a translucent woman kneeling as if in prayer. Harry investigated and discovered the identity of the child and made the connection to her mother, Sue Howard Hardy. Sorry, Harry and Hardy are kind of going to be mixed up here. I apologize. And of course, Hardy is buried just a few yards away. He also discovered that many had claimed to see that same young woman in period dress near that same tombstone knelt in mourning. Even more reports exist of passersby hearing her sobbing tears for the daughter that she never knew. The picture actually became rather famous in the paranormal world as proof of the existence of ghosts. To this day, during tours of the area, copies of the photograph are passed around for tourists to see and look at their own eyes the ghost of Sue Howard Hardy. Yet it took 35 years From when Harry took his faithful photo, for another photo to emerge. A young woman named Cassie would once again capture Sue on film. The photo that was taken in 2022 captures a different angle of the same figure over the same grave. Now, this may be proof of paranormal. Maybe you're going to say it can be debunked, maybe whatever. It happened. Two people have pictures, and there are ghosts in the pictures at the same spot. Um, Deal with it. Perhaps maybe someday Sue's spirit will be able to rest, but from the stories and the evidence, it appears she still mourns her child to this day. So if you happen to visit the old cemetery and you should hear a woman crying, take pity on the young mother whose life ended without ever being able to mourn the child that she lost. From St. Philip's Church, we're going to go not very far to Laguerre Street because our next tale from the historic Holy City is the one of Madame Talvande and the Talvande Mansion, also known as the Stone Gate of the Sword Gate House. I got to quit saying the wrong words here. Which is located on Laguerre Street. Now it's a private residence now, but the Talvande Mansion was first constructed in 1803. It replaced a building that was already there on the premises, and over the course of several decades, wings would be added to the original home. In the 1810s, it would be purchased by the Talvande family, and the matriarch of which was Madame Talvande would turn it into Madame Talvande's school, finishing school for girls. Madame Talvande prided herself on being a strict schoolmarm and providing care and guidance needed to these young daughters of the wealthy and elite of the South. She built a reputation as being the best in the nation. Enter young Maria and her beau, Greg Morris, who would become the Madam's undoing. Now, Maria was sent to the school by her father because she wouldn't stop seeing George Morris. Every attempt he'd made to dissuade them from seeing one another had just ultimately failed. So he sent her to the school, and the plan worked for a brief period of time. Maria would sit sullenly in the mansion, longing to see her love again. Finally, she received a letter from George, and it basically said that they're going to be wed the next day. And so it was under the cover of darkness that a friend of George's, Mrs. Blanks, escorted Maria from Madame Talvande's school, where she snuck out, to St. Michael's Church, where George and a priest, Mr. Dalcho, were waiting. There, George and Maria were wed, with the witnesses being Mrs. Blanks, a bridemaid named Sarah Seabrook, and of course Mr. Dalcho officiating the ceremony. Afterwards, Maria was returned to the school so that the next morning George could come and claim her properly, as she was now his wife. The next morning came, and George arrived with a carriage and, all of the stuff that you got to show up with to pick up your wife. And he knocked on the door stating he was here to take Mrs. Morris to her new home. Madame Talvande answered the door and was like, "Look, there's no Mrs. Morris here." And George was like, "Sorry to inform you, you're wrong." This vexed Madame Talvande, and so she summoned all of the girls and all of the staff down to the courtyard to assemble, and once they were there, she demanded that Mrs. Morris came forward. Now, for several moments, no one said or did anything, until finally young Maria stepped forward and admitted that she was the newly married Mrs. George Morris. Madame Talvande was livid and berated Maria at first for doing something so brash, and then she turned on her staff and began berating them for allowing this to happen. Now, George took this opportunity to grab his new wife and whisk her away, and apparently they went on to live happily ever after, which is great for them. Madame Talvande, unfortunately, did not. She set out to increase the security of the school. She ordered that the grounds be surrounded by a concrete and steel fence, the top of which was said to be lined with broken glass to prevent wayward boys from sneaking in and corrupting her young charges. She also ordered the commission of a pair of heavy wrought iron gates with swords on them, hence the Sword Gate House, as the house is also known as. These went at the entrance of the school, and were meant to be menacing and deter anyone from entering in. And while she never again had a pupil pull a stunt even close to that of Maria and George, her reputation suffered, and by 1849, the school closed its doors for good. Now, here's where the spooky part happens because, of course, I tell ghost stories. The home would later become a residence, private residence, and people would see the spirit of Madame Talvande walking the halls at night, checking on the girls, even though there weren't any girls there. Occasionally, doors would open and there would be a blast of cold air that would come through them, supposedly Madame Talvande opening the doors. Even more curious is that passers-by state that at night, when you walk past those stone gates, you can see the eerie vision of Madame Talvande staring out at the gates at you, daring anyone to intrude upon the grounds that she protects viciously. Anyway, folks, that's our stories for today. I really hope that you enjoyed them. I hope that they gave you a little taste of the history of Charleston, South Carolina. I hope that you were entertained, because that's my goal, is to entertain and educate. Remember that you can support this show by going to patreon.com/, The Carolina Storyteller. You can also check out the website, thecarolinastoryteller.com, which has a link to our store with all of our merchandise in it for this show, Valmont the Black Raven Chronicles, and Not Just Paranormal, which will be returning next Saturday. We've got a great show lined up for you then. Again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time, and oh yeah, stay spooky, my friends. If you enjoyed this, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. And also, check out one of these videos, or like the playlist right there.